გაწყენთ. განის მადლობა. მოგესალმებით. მე ვარ თეა კუჭუხიძე, მუშაობ ამერიკის საელჩოში, გაცვლითი პროგრამების კოორდინატორი ვარ. ძალიან მიხარია დღეს თქვენთან შეხვედრა. ძალიან დიდი მადლობა რომ მოხვედით და დაინტერესდით. შეხვედრით მე მსურს ძალიან მოკლედ გითხრათ იმის შესახებ, სანამ კრისი უფრო ვრცლად და საინტერესოდ გესაუბრებათ ამერიკა-საქართველოს ურთიერთობების შესახებ. მინდოდა მეთქვა რომ ალბათ გსმენიათ, ალბათ იცით იმ გაცვლითი პროგრამების შესახებ, რომელსაც ამერიკის მთავრობა აფინანსებს და სთავაზობს საქართველოს მოქალაქეებს. თქვენ სკამზე ნახავდით პატარა საინფორმაციო ბროშურას, აქ არის ჩამონათვალი ყველა იმ პროგრამის, რომელსაც ამერიკის მთავრობა სრულად აფინანსებს და ყველა ეს პროგრამა კონკურსის სახით ცხადდება ხოლმე. წელიწადის სხვადასხვა დროს, წლის სხვადასხვა დროს ცხადდება სხვადასხვა პროგრამა. და ეს პროგრამები არის როგორც სკოლის მოსწავლეებისთვის, ასევე ბაკალავრის საფეხურის სტუდენტებისთვის, სამაგისტრო საფეხურის სტუდენტებისთვის, ასევე უნივერსიტეტის პროფესორ-მასწავლებლებისთვის, მკვლევარებისთვის, ანუ ყველა საფეხურს მოიცავს თითქმის. ბაკალავრის საფეხურის სტუდენტებისთვის არის ასეთი ერთ სემესტრიანი გაცვლითი პროგრამა Global U-Grad, თუ დაინტერესებული ხართ. ეს პროგრამა ეხლა ჯერ კიდევ ცოტა დრო არის დარჩენილი, თუ დაინტერესებული ხართ ამ პროგრამას შეგიძლიათ მონაწილეობა მიიღოთ. ასევე არის კიდევ ორი სხვა უფრო მოკლევადიანი საზაფხულო სკოლა, Ben Franklinis საზაფხულო სკოლა და Study of the US Summer Institute, ესეც ორივე არის ბაკალავრის საფეხურის სტუდენტებისთვის და ასევე იმ სტუდენტთა საყურადღებოდ, ვინც ეხლა მეოთხე კურსი ან სამაგისტრო საფეხურზე სწავლობს, გვაქვს ასევე Fulbright-ის სამაგისტრო პროგრამა, რომელიც გაზაფხულზე ცხადდება ხოლმე მაისის თვეში და აგვისტოს დასაწყისში არის ხოლმე აპლიკაციების მიღება. ამ ყველა პროგრამას აქვს სხვადასხვა წესი, სხვადასხვა რამ არის საჭირო. ზოგი ამ პროგრამიდან ითხოვს TOEFL-ის ტესტის ჩაბარებას, ზოგ პროგრამას საზაფხულო სკოლას არ სჭირდება ტესტების ჩაბარება. ანუ ყველა პროგრამაზე ძალიან დეტალურად რომ გესაუბროთ, ძალიან დიდი დრო დაგჭირდება. ამიტომ უბრალოდ მინდოდა თქვენი ყურადღება შემეჩერებინა იმაზე, რომ ეს პროგრამები არსებობს და საელჩოს ვებგვერდზე არის ინფორმაცია ამ პროგრამების შესახებ თავმოყრილი. შეგიძლიათ თუ არ გინახავთ, ნახოთ საელჩოს ვებგვერდზე, გაეცნოთ ვადა გასულ, ანუ იმ პროგრამებს, რომელსაც უკვე გაუვიდა აპლიკაციების მიღების ბოლოვა და არ ვშლით ხოლმე, ეს რჩება საელჩოს ვებგვერდზე და როგორც წესი პირობები არ იცვლება ხოლმე წლიდან წლამდე, მეტნაკლებად იგივე რჩება და შეგიძლიათ გაეცნოთ და რა თქმა უნდა, ყოველთვის შეგიძლიათ ჩვენს ძვირფას კოლეგას ელენეს იცნობთ ალბათ ყველანი ძალიან კარგად, ელენეს ესტუმროთ რჩევებისთვის და დახმარებისთვის Education USA Advising Center-ში. ძალიან დიდი მადლობა ელენე და თუ გაქვთ რაიმე შეკითხვები ამ პროგრამებთან დაკავშირებით, რაც შეიძლება სწრაფად თუ შემიძლია რამე კითხვებს გავცე პასუხი და შემდეგ დაუთმოთ კრის სცენა. თუ გაქვთ რამე შეკითხვა. არ გაქვთ. დიახ. ყველას აქვს სხვადასხვა ვადა, აი მაგალითად ეს Global U-Grad ერთი სემესტრის განმავლობაში გრძელდება. საზაფხულო სკოლა არის 4 კვირიანი და 5 კვირიანი და სამაგისტრო პროგრამა არის 2 სრული აკადემიური წელი. ანუ ყველაზე ხანგრძლივი პროგრამა არის Fulbright-ის სამაგისტრო პროგრამა 2 წლიანი. ყველა სხვადასხვა რამ სჭირდება Global U-Grad. დიახ. მეოთხე კურსზე ვინც არიან, მათ შეუძლიათ სამაგისტრო პროგრამაზე შეიტანონ. სამაგისტრო პროგრამას სჭირდება უფრო მაღალი დონის ინგლისური ენის ცოდნა, აქ ბარდება TOEFL-ის ტესტი და GRE-ის ტესტი, ანუ ეს ორი ტესტი არის საჭირო. Fulbright-ის სამაგისტრო პროგრამაზე, Global U-Grad-ს რაც შეეხება ერთ სემესტრიანი პროგრამა, რომელიც არის პირველი, მეორე, მესამე კურსის სტუდენტებისთვის, ამ შემთხვევაში TOEFL-ის ტესტი ბარდება მხოლოდ და აქ სასურველი ქულა არის 60-დან 80-მდე, ან უფრო ზემოთ. და რაც შეეხება საზაფხულო პროგრამას არ სჭირდება TOEFL-ის ან რომელიმე სხვა ტესტები. ეს ყველა არის ამერიკას ეხება. ამერიკაში ყველა პროგრამას მასპინძლობს სხვადასხვა უნივერსიტეტი, ანუ ესეთი წინასწარ კონკრეტულად რომელიმე დადგენილი შეიძლება არ იყოს, ანუ რომელიმე სხვა უნივერსიტეტი. კარგით, მაშინ თუ გექნებათ ეხლა ძალიან რთულია რომ შეიძლება შეკითხვა არ გქონდეთ, შეგიძლიათ შემდეგ დაგვიკავშირდეთ, ან იმეილი მოგწეროთ, ამ საინფორმაციო ბუკლეტზე არის ჩვენი საკონტაქტო იმეილიც მოცემული, ასევე შეგიძლიათ საელჩოს Facebook-ის თუ სარგებლობთ მესიჯის სახით მოგწეროთ საელჩოს Facebook-ის გვერდზე, ან შეგიძლიათ საელჩოში დარეკოთ და სთხოვოთ რომ გადაგრთონ თეა კუჭუხიძესთან და დიდი სიამოვნებით ვუპასუხებთ თქვენ შეკითხვებს. წარმატებას გისურვებთ და ძალიან დიდი მადლობა ყურადღებისთვის და ვუთმობ კრის.
გამარჯობა, მე ვარ კრისტოფერ ანდერსონი, მე დავით სეფ ქართულად, მაგრამ მე არ არის კარგი ენის სტუდენტი და შემდეგ ველაპარაკებ ინგლისურად. ამ წელს ამერიკას საქართველოს ჩვენ აღნიშნავთ ოსტატის დიპლომატური ურთიერთობა. We even have a sign saying so. და ახლა ჩვენ ვარ სტრატეგიული პარტნიორები. ეს არის ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი, მაგრამ რა ნიშნავს სტრატეგიული პარტნიორები? პირველ რიგში მინდა თქვა, რომ ჩვენს მიზანი აქ საქართველოში არის უფრო სვიდობიანი, უფრო წარმატებული და უფრო დემოკრატიული საქართველო. ეს არ არის არაფერი არის ადვილი თქვა, მაგრამ არის ძალიან რთული რეალაში. მაგრამ ჩვენ გვაქვს ძალიან კარგი თანამშრომლობა საქართველოსთან ერთად რამდენიმე სფეროში. პირველ რიგში სამხედრო სფეროში და ჩემ კოლეგმა იქნება მალე იმედი მაქვს და ისობრებს სამხედრო სფეროში. მაგრამ ასევე გვაქვს ძალიან კარგი თანამშრომლობა დიპლომატიური და კულტურული სფეროში. და დიპლომატური ეს ნიშნავს UN-ში და სხვა ადგილი და ასევე ჩვენ ხარსუჯერ საქართველოს სინამდვილე რუსის აგრესია. ეს არის ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი. და ეს ნიშნავს რომ ჩვენ ხარსუჯერს პოლიტიკა ოკუპირებული ტერიტორიისთვის ჩვენ გვაქვს ძალიან კარგი თანამშრომლობა ეს სამინისტრო და ასევე ჩვენ გვაქვს სხვადასხვა პროგრამა peer-to-peer მუშაობს ოკუპირებულ აფხაზეთში. მაგრამ მე ასე მინდა ვისაუბრებ ცოტა კულტურული სფეროში, იმიტომ რომ მე ვარ კულტურულ ატაშე. და ჩვენ გვაქვს დაახლოებით სამი კულტურულ სფეროს პირველ რიგში გაცვლითი პროგრამი. ძალიან სამართლებული და დაახლოებით 200 ადამიანი Hobosluarad, the Asave, the Hlovit Otsi programmi, did you mention all of them, right? You did. The Ampiriochi, Otsatislis, Iho Exviatasi, Kursam Tavrebeli. Iho Zalim Samartibuli programmabi. Magram S. Aris Ertizalian Concretuli, Aspecti Twins Partnorba. Samsuhadot, Somhetshi da Azerbaijanshi Araris Zan Bevri Adgili Gatsliti programshi. Magram Rogor strategically partnerbi Twenvax Upro Adgili Gatsliti programshi da Asvet Twenvax Upro Upro Shirad programa. Meore aspekti twens kulturuli tanamshomloba aris podeshi aris sotar rutuli chamtis kulturuli mem kvidrobis tatsvis. Okay, I got it. Good. Twengrax bevri programa dahlobit or nachvari milioni dollari or statis slis da esiho programi rogorts jvaris monastari Achla Twengrax Zelin Kargi Programa Smithsonian Institution da Conservatoire Tan Ertad Esaris Digitizatia Polyphony Musicas Twist da Istoriuli field recordings da Asave Twengrax Zalian Rogorts Adre Twa Twengrax Zalian מנישנלוואני פרוגרמי, abchazetshi da vulnerable communities standard. Okay, so I've exhausted my Georgian. Sorry, but I hope that actually made sense. But I do want to switch to English. You all speak English, right? Great. Okay. Well, thank you for bearing with me as I mangled your beautiful language. So as I said, we do work in those three areas, but overall, our overarching goal is to help Georgia become more democratic, more successful, and more prosperous. And we are doing this, and we believe we are doing this because this is what the Georgian people want. The foundation of our foreign policy here in Georgia and everywhere in Europe and around the world is it's based on choice. We believe that each person and each country should have a choice. As an individual, you should have the right to choose your own government. As a country, you should have the right to choose your own foreign policy. And so what does that mean? That means that the Georgian people have said, you want to be part of the West. You're rejoining your place in the West. Oh, great. Hey, come on up. Welcome. Almost done, so come on. And so, as I was saying, we are here supporting the long-standing will of the Georgian people to be part of the West. And I would say rejoining your place in the West because until the Russian invasion in the 1920s, Georgia was well on its way to being part of Europe, right? You have a very strong democratic tradition. Women here in Georgia got the right to vote before they did in the United States. You have an amazing culture, especially here in Kutaisi with your wonderful musicians and writers and everything. They did an amazing job, and then Russia came in and occupied and sort of prevented you from integrating with Europe. So we are here not because we want to impose our view on what Georgia should or shouldn't do, but we are here because you have said you want to integrate with the West. And so we're here supporting that view. And as part of that process, we have invested over $6 billion in assistance programs in Georgia. That ranges from USAID programs for economic development. It includes our exchange programs. It includes the work on cultural preservation. But that's a huge investment that is well above anything you get in Azerbaijan or Armenia because of your stated desire to be a strong partner. So it's a mutual beneficial relationship. We are working together on this. We have also trained, and Colonel Bilbo will talk more about that, tens of thousands of Georgian soldiers to help strengthen your military so that you can be good international partners and you can resist Russian aggression. And then we have also sent, as I said earlier, 6,000 people to the United States on exchange programs. These people, like Professor David, are here making a huge difference throughout Georgia. And in fact, if you go look at almost every successful company, you will find people who have benefited from exchange programs. And at the beginning, 30 years ago, our assistance was pretty simple. We were bringing food, we were bringing medicine, and it was very direct assistance. And over time, our assistance has changed, so now it's a lot less visible. So we're not handing out things anymore, not much. But what we are doing is providing financing so that a company can hire additional people, or they can build a factory, or they can expand, and so have a lot more jobs. And so we're now doing more indirect support and working through Georgian partners to do a lot. So sometimes people don't always see, well, what is it that the US government does? But if you look, we're providing huge amounts of support for economic development programs, working with farmers, working to help create markets, helping promote access. And so that's a big part of what we do. We do also work a lot on democracy because there are clear standards for joining EU and NATO. But that's actually a small part of what we do, although it's often the most visible and the most talked about in the media. But those standards are clear standards set by these organizations, and we're helping Georgia meet them. And this is something that you have said you want to do. So this is, at the base of everything we're doing here, is trying to help you achieve a more peaceful, more prosperous, and more successful Georgia. So I think I'll stop there, turn the floor over to Colonel Joe Bilbo, and then we'll take questions at the end. That sound good? Great, thank you. No, you can sit or whatever you prefer. I've been doing a lot of sitting, so.
All right.
time to take my coffee.
What? Well, hello. I am Joe Bilbo. I am the defense attaché at the U.S. Embassy. So I am the senior U.S. military representative here at the U.S. Embassy. But this is not my first time in Georgia. The first time I came to Georgia was back in 2009. I came at a time where Georgia, shortly after a war, said to the United States, hey, we want to continue to work with you. We want to continue to support your efforts internationally. And that was because right after the war, the United States provided a pretty significant amount of assistance to Georgia. So Georgia at that time offered to send a battalion of your soldiers to Afghanistan. A battalion's about 600. It grew to 2 battalions, so about 1,200. At the time, Georgia was the largest contributor per capita to the operations in Afghanistan. The relationship that the U.S. military has with the Georgian military is one that really is unmatched by many of our non-allied countries. So it's hard to compete with a relationship between the U.S. and the U.K., but the U.S. and Georgia's military relationship is extremely strong, and it's built on years and years of, unfortunately, fighting in foreign lands. But what we do in Georgia is we work together to increase the defensive capability of your military. And the Georgian military that I saw in 2009 and the Georgian military that exists today are 2 very different militaries. They're different in their capabilities, they're different in their mentality, they're different in their structure. And that's important because all of you, whether you will serve in the military or not, your nation is tied to that military because you live in a very rough neighborhood. That's the reality, and you're not going to change your geography, right? And it's unlikely, at least the last 300-400 years of history shows, Georgia's not going to see its northern neighbor change its foreign policy. So the way that we, the United States, think that Georgia can best defend itself is to have a strong deterrent. And that deterrent can't come from the military alone. That deterrent has to be a resilient society, has to be a society that understands that it takes everyone to resist malign influence from abroad, whether that's informational influence, economic influence, or in the worst case, military activity. And so right now, the United States is working not just with the Georgian Defense Forces, but your Ministry of Internal Affairs, including the Coast Guard, your emergency services, and we're continuing to build more and more partners to work on how to build resilient societies in Georgia. We started a pilot program in the Racha region where we are supporting everything from hospitals and fire departments, community centers, and local government on how to prepare for emergency situations. That can be a flood, a fire, a snowstorm, all the way to war. And having the equipment, the communications, and the plans to work together on how best to respond. That's the part of society that whether you choose to serve in the military or not someday, that I would encourage you to become a part of. Seek out opportunities, whether it's through a student group, whether it's through volunteering, however, that you can connect into your society and help build that resilience into your society. Understand what is going on in the world today. Everybody's got a cell phone on them, right? Everybody's somehow connected to the outside world through the internet. The internet has changed us as a species. It really has. It's changed the way we think. It's changed the way that we perceive. And unfortunately, there are many in the world that use that as a means to divide us. It's important that you understand that is going on, and learning how that is being used to divide your society, whether it's Georgians and other ethnic groups inside of Georgia, Armenians, Azeris, or whoever, or political inside your country, one party versus another. It's going on in the United States. Polarization in the United States is probably as bad as it's been since the early days of the Republic. There used to be times where we had people fighting on the floor of our House of Representatives too. So all countries have to go through evolutionary processes. So those are the many ways that the United States military is working and partnered with different groups inside of Georgia, and I look forward to discussing any of those topics with you.
So now I think we can take some questions. If you want us to drone on more, we're happy to do that, but I think we can have a nice interactive discussion. So the first person who asks the question gets a gift bag. All right, who's up? All right, I see a hand. All right, great. Bag for you. All right, what's your question?
Okay. First of all, catch it? Okay, first of all, thank you so much. Thank you that you are interested in Atsu, in our university, in us, future generation. So my question is the next. As we know, America supports democracy so much, and you have mentioned it a couple of times as well. So what's your thoughts about Georgian democracy? Is it really a thing? Do we have a democracy? And what we should do, like, to change it in a better, like, for a better? That's my question.
Joe, do you want to take that one, or do you want me to? All right. So one of the reasons why the U.S. and Georgia are strategic partners is that we share some real core values, right? One of those is a fierce independence and wanting to be free, which American Georgians share. But the other one of that is a strong democratic tradition. And I was mentioning a little bit about how women in Georgia got the right to vote before the United States, right? And one of the things I've been struck by being here in particular in Kutaisi is just how different Georgia's future would be if there wasn't for the Russian invasion in 1921 or 22, I forget exactly, 21 I think, right? Yeah. You had a very progressive constitution. You had Chavchavadze and the many other great thinkers, including many from Imereti, were really progressive and really trying to build on a strong democratic tradition. I mean, Queen Tamar and her councils was also sort of the budding, had a strong democratic element to it. So I think Georgia has a strong democratic spirit. But what we've also learned, and we've learned this the hard way in the United States, is democracy is about more than just the right to vote. It's about having strong, independent institutions. And that is something that it's very easy to take for granted. Politicians often don't like independent institutions, sometimes because for bad reasons, but also sometimes for understandable reasons. They're held accountable for, you need to get this done, right? We want you to do this. But then some other institution says, well, you can't do that, or you can't do it that way. So they get frustrated and they want to say, but I was elected to do X, right? The court doesn't want me to do that. I'll tell the court what to do, right? But that is a constant tension, right? And that's unfortunately a constant tension for autocracy. And I think the U.S., as the oldest constitutional democracy, has learned the importance of democratic institutions. We've seen just how important that is over the last 10 years in the United States, but we've also seen that democracy is not an end state. It's a process, right? You constantly have to work on that. And I think that's where Georgia is sometimes struggling, where you don't have, we want to help you have stronger democratic institutions, stronger independent institutions that ensures that that strong democratic spirit that does flourish here in Georgia is protected and allowed to proceed and allows for full democratic institutions. So that, I think, is a key step, and with that, it'll be, I mean, we see that with the 12 points that the EU was asking for, right, for EU membership. It's democratic institutions, because that is important for a long-term successful democracy. It's not just about one vote or one election. It's about a broader process and institutions.
Let me build on that just a little bit. So I had a professor named Michael Mandelbaum. Typical in the United States, we have these group that they go in and out of academia and government. When their party is in government, they're in the government. And when their party is out of the government, they're in academia. That's how it works. He wrote a book, it's called Democracy's Good Name. In that book, he provides his very simple definition of what is a democracy. And he says it takes three things: free and fair elections, the rule of law, and a strong civil society, which is what Chris was just talking about. But let's talk about the U.S. real quick. Free and fair elections. In the United States, to be able to vote, we have a thing called early voting. Our voting occurs on a Tuesday, which is a work day. Not everybody has a job where it's convenient to go vote. So different states choose how you might vote outside of that day. And on our political spectrum, some states allow very broad early voting. Some states provide very little opportunity for early voting. So that's a question: what's free and fair, right? Rule of law. Rule of law in the United States is also very complicated. We have federal laws, we have state laws, and again, when you go between Alabama and our Georgia, well, that's probably not that different. But if you go to New York, it's very different. If you go to California, even more different. My point is that you'll always find things you don't like. If you ever find something and you agree with everything, you're not looking hard enough, right? So don't be discouraged if you find things that you don't like. Those are the things that you, the future, the intelligent ones, need to work on. So don't be discouraged. Don't think it's, yes, we have democracy, or no, we don't. It's a process. And once you get there, it never stops.
And the U.S. history is a long effort of expanding the circle of who has rights. When we were founded, not everyone had the right to vote. In fact, women, it was a very small group. And over the last 200 plus years, we have expanded who gets those rights. And who gets to benefit from the full benefits of citizenship. So it is a process, like Joe was saying. So, next question. We got a few more bags here. So, next question. They're really nice bags.
All right, you're in university. You have to be inquisitive. This is a sign of either it's too close to lunch or. Oh, great.
This side of the room is winning.
It's also the females that are winning, males. So.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you to come with us and meet us. And my question is very different. We are the international relationship students, and our dream is to become ambassadors like you. And my dream is, my question is, was it hard to become ambassador in Europe, in America, in Georgia?
So first of all, I am not the ambassador. She is coming tomorrow, and if I start pretending to be her, I'll get in trouble. But yeah, to be a diplomat or attaché, military or cultural attaché, yes, I think it is difficult, but at the same time, if this is what you really enjoy doing, it doesn't seem difficult, right? To be a successful diplomat, you have to really enjoy learning about other countries. You have to enjoy studying other cultures, and you have to enjoy being out and meeting new people and doing that. And I'll say that when I was 10 years old, I was like, oh, I want to be this in my future job. And my best friend's mother said, are you kidding? You're going to be a diplomat. And I laughed and said, no way. Who wants to be a diplomat? No. So I'd worked, did other things. I was really focused on U.S. politics. I wanted to go and do U.S. government. And then over time, I slowly oh yeah, I guess I do want to be a diplomat. So I didn't join our foreign service, the MFA equivalent, until I was almost 30 years old. But it does seem to be a good fit for what I like to do. I mean, some people, when they have time off, they like to do other things. I like reading books about history. I mean, I love reading books about Georgian history, traveling around, listening to, I love trying Georgian food. So if that's what you like doing, then it's a great career. If the idea of moving abroad and living in a new country every 3 or 4 years is horrible, then not a good job. But I think the core thing is to have the ability to think not just what is right for us, but you have to realize what is the perspective of the other person or the other country that you're dealing with. And that's where sometimes that is the core skill of diplomacy, which is you have to remember what is it that, I mean, I'm here to advance U.S. interests, right? That is my job. What the great thing about being in Georgia is U.S. and Georgia interests overlap, right? So we are trying to do the same thing. But it's important that you know how the other person perceives what you're saying and doing, but also how what they want and what they need, and so you can find where that overlap is.
So this is not my first time getting to work with Chris, who one day will be an ambassador, by the way. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. What's critical on top of what everything Chris said is you have to understand your own country first. Before you can begin to understand another country, you have to understand your own. You have to understand your own culture. What is culture? What makes Georgians Georgians? What makes Georgian interest important, right? Because your job as a diplomat is to go and advocate for those. But to be able to do that effectively, you then have to understand the interest of the other countries, the cultures in which you're acting. It's a wonderful, military, but this is my 6th time working at an embassy, so I'm fast becoming a member of the State Department. But I encourage you all to seek out opportunities to serve in your foreign ministry and work for your country in that way.
But I would also say that it doesn't have to be in the ministry, foreign ministry. I think those are great, and I've enjoyed it. But there are other organizations as well, whether that's OSCE for the ODIHR, the Democracy of Human Rights Organization, or international NGOs or things. There's a lot of there are a lot of ways to have a positive impact and be involved in international affairs and not just do the MFA diplomat embassy route. So lots of great ways to be involved, and we really do encourage it. It's a great lifestyle if you like moving and being abroad. So. All right, anyone from this side of the room? All right, good. I saw this hand first. In exchange programs? So for exchange programs, well, first of all, and this is true for all of you, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of those things. We put all of our information out there. But what makes a successful candidate or an applicant for these exchange programs is, so Georgia has a great program for scholarships, right? You have a very straightforward competition, right? Whoever is the best student gets the best grades. You get the top, I forget what, 10% or something, get scholarships. That's a great process, and that is really fair. That is not what we do in the exchange programs. It is not an academic competition. What we are looking for, and this is completely subjective, and I acknowledge that straight off the bat, but what we are looking for is who is going to make the biggest impact in the future. So that's what, because what this is it's an investment. It's an investment in Georgia. It's not, we're not doing these exchange programs because, I mean, you're all lovely people, but it's not like, oh, I really like you, here's a scholarship. It's no, it's a, we think you going to have this experience will make a difference in Georgia. So what we're looking for, and it's hard and imperfect, but we're looking for is who is going to come back and make a difference. So when you do the application, one, have that open mindset, right? You have to be going in with I want to learn about the world. The other part is, I want to then do this. I want to come back and do something to make a difference. I mean, we have had people who say, no, I deserved it. I am the best. And honestly, that answer proved to me that I was right in not selecting that person, because if they were so convinced that they were the best and that they were right, then they're not going to go and learn. I mean, the whole point of doing these exchange programs is to go and learn about the US, but also learn about your own country. Because it's often easier to see what makes Georgia great, or what you don't like about Georgia, what you do, from abroad, right? Going experience a new culture or a new country is really important for helping you understand your own country better. And so that's a big part of why we do these programs, is that we think a lot of these people who will come back and make a real difference. And that's what we're hoping for. That's why we're investing in these programs. I mean, these programs are not cheap. The Fulbright program alone, I think it's about $100,000 per year per student, right? We send 12 people to the United States a year. Now, the Georgian government's our partner on that, and we've got private scholarship as well, but we're putting a major investment into these programs. 200 people a year are going to the US. We're doing that because we believe, all right, okay, Georgia has changed a tremendous amount in 2002. Now, I actually joined the State Department in 2005, but I first visited Georgia in 2002. I was working for an international organization, and Georgia was lovely. It was it was a great experience, and I wanted to come back, although it was chaotic. Do you guys know what a shakedown is? I stopped a police officer for directions, and we had to pay a service fee for directions, right? We had men in balaclavas and submachine guns pull the car over and tried to shake us down as well. We went skiing in Udaori, and we had traveled 12 hours from Baku to get there, and then we had one day of skiing, and the next day there was no electricity. They said, okay, go home. It's like, I drove 12 hours to get here. No, go